Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com.
Over the weekend, there was a shooting in Michigan where these little kids had shown up at a splash pad trying to enjoy a Saturday morning. They were having ice cream and enjoying the sun on a beautiful Saturday morning, and then a mass shooter shows up to shoot them. And parents were having to cover their children. One set of parents were shot 7 times. What goes on in the mind of somebody who does that? We talk with the lead prosecutor of James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooting, about why people do this. We also talk about the minimum wage in California. They've implemented a $20 minimum wage that's resulted in 10,000 people losing their jobs. We'll get all of this and more. Tune in to Jenna Ellis tonight.
Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing and investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hunt. I'm a Salem media host in Denver, Colorado, and today I'm filling in for Jenna Ellis. Now, I've known Jenna for years, going back to 2015 when I started working at Colorado Christian University. She had just been hired as a professor there, and the president of the university pulled me aside one day and he said, "There's something very special about Jenna Ellis. She's very intelligent, she's smart, she's quick. I want you to help her get places." So we started putting her in front of committees to testify down at the state capitol. She started to do radio and television interviews, and she has now shot the moon. She's a national voice for conservative values, and it is a real honor to be able to fill in for her today. Well, let's dive into the news. California implementing a new minimum wage law that has cost 10,000 jobs. You're going to see this graphic here in just a second. It is shocking. California fast food restaurants have cut 10,000 jobs thanks to the state's $20 minimum wage, a trade group says. The state's $20 minimum wage is resulting in struggling franchises having to cut labor costs and raising prices to survive. Jim Nels is a supply chain officer and consultant. You see this happening in California. What's your reaction, Jim?
Well, it's insane, but it's not unexpected. I mean, when's the last time you walked into a bank, went to the airport, or even went into a McDonald's and you didn't have to go to a machine before you could even talk to a person, right? When you pay unskilled labor more money than the economy demands, this is what happens. And this is what's going to hurt people in the long term. You're going to see more and more people become unemployed, but you're also going to see entrepreneurs no longer invest in California take that money out of there and go other places. That's why you're seeing more and more of these franchises shutting down their stores in California because they can no longer afford to be there. And like we were talking before we started this segment, I started out at $3.25 an hour working actually at a McDonald's in the Chicagoland area. And guess what? I was a stupid kid. I didn't know what I was doing, but it taught me how to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, how to show up with a shower, how to show up with a clean uniform, and how to be a good person to the customers that came in there. They're hurting the future generation of workers because they're not allowing them to gain the skills that they need to become effective members of society.
Jim, they're also passing the cost on to consumers. No business is like, you know what, we'll just eat a $20 minimum wage and won't raise prices. So you get a de facto tax now upon everybody in the state of California. And I used to live in California. You have taxes added to gas. You got taxes now added to your burrito because they've got to pay people that should be getting a base minimum wage starting out 14, 15, 16 years old, getting a job. They now believe you got to somehow pay them a living wage. Why not just pay everybody a living wage? What's the problem with that, Jim?
Well, there are two things with that. Once you establish a living wage, then all the prices go up from there. That was one of the major flaws with some of these candidates who said, let's just give everyone $10,000 a year to spend on whatever they want. Well, then prices are going to go up by $10,000 a year. Here's the thing. In 2022, the last year that there was data available, there were just over 1 million people earning the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And guess what? They weren't adults. They were people 18 and under learning new skills. This is why it's important not to do this to people. And again, like your point, not to put extra taxes on working Americans who sometimes have to rely on fast food in order to feed their family because that's the only way they can afford it under the Biden regime, because the inflation under Biden is so extreme that sometimes a fast food restaurant is your only option to give your family the calories they need to make it to the next day.
Yeah, to your point, a vast majority of these people, well over 60, maybe even 70% of people earning a minimum wage are under the age of 18. They're just starting out. They have no skill set. As you mentioned, too, I worked at McDonald's when I was 15 years old. It's one of the greatest jobs I ever had. One, because when you're serving people every day that fast, your job really flies by. But you're learning what it means to be responsible. You're learning what it means to be an adult. You're learning what it means to work hard for an employer and deliver for your customers. You have zero skill set that actually benefits the company other than handing a cheeseburger outside the delivery window, right? So they're taking a chance on you. So we need to help people kind of break out of this mindset that the minimum wage is a living wage. It's just there to help start people. So are we cold-hearted, Jim? Are we cold-hearted by saying that you shouldn't be living off of a minimum wage?
What's more cold-hearted? Saying that we shouldn't have a minimum wage of $20 an hour, or giving people who are 16 to 18 years old the chance to start building a skill set that's going to give them the skills that they need to be successful for the rest of their lives? That is less cold-hearted, and that is why the message of the right is always right. We need to develop the skills in the next generation so that they know how to do customer service, so that they know how to get up on time, they know how to show up to work, showered, clean, with a new uniform, and be ready to go for that day. And that is why having this $20 minimum wage is absolutely insane, because again, if I was an entrepreneur in California, I'd be invested in machines right now. I would be doing automation. I'd have maybe 2 people working at my McDonald's, and the rest of it, you go to the machine, you put your stuff in there, and then a little bit later, you'll get something, but only after another machine give you your change back.
Jim Nels, you're a supply chain consultant based out of Chicago. I was talking to a restaurant owner the other day, and they said, traditionally, up until COVID, a restaurant owner would make about 10% profit year over year. It was a good business to be in. Following COVID, they're now down to 3 or 4%. But when they push these minimum wage laws, like they're doing in California, up to $20, they're now down to negative margins. It actually loses money to start a restaurant if you're an investor than it is to even start one and to try to make money. So you're a supply chain officer. You're in the business. Does it make sense for people to get into restaurant businesses when you have this type of government mandates, $20 minimum wages upon people?
Absolutely not. So this is why what you're going to see in the next year or so in places like California where they mandate these insane minimum wages is you're only going to see corporate franchises operating. You're not going to see franchisees operating because franchisees can no longer afford to do that. And the corporate restaurants can afford to make up losses in California what the profits are going to make in Missouri because they don't have to pay people $20 an hour in Missouri. So, but if you are a new franchisee who wants to start a business, you want to buy a McDonald's, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, whatever you want to start, you're not going to do it in California anymore. So you're going to hurt, again, the growth of business in California because every single policy that Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California put into place for the people that they say they want to help are actually destroying the lives of the people that they claim to want to help. And that is why we need to focus on deregulating the U.S. economy. We need to get folks back to work no matter what the wage is, because the economy will dictate the wage. And maybe in some places, the wage needs to be $27 an hour for an entry level person. I would have loved to have made that back in 1985 when I got my first job. But guess what? For the majority of people going into these low skilled or even no skilled jobs like you and I had when we started McDonald's, guess what? You're lucky to make minimum wage because you are there to learn from them. And hopefully you just don't screw it up to the point where their customers won't come back again.
Well, you have the old adage with socialism that eventually you run out of other people's money. Wealthy business leaders are leaving these states like California or even Delaware. You saw what they did to Elon Musk. They're heading to more business-friendly states. At a certain point, you're going to run out of people that are going to employ others in these liberal states. And they're going to have to reckon with that. Help me understand why people aren't changing who they're voting for. Look at San Francisco. I saw the statistic today. They built 16 homes in all of last year in the city of San Francisco. Only 16. And everything in a liberal run state or city is more expensive and more crime ridden. At what point do people wake up and go, this type of government intrusion into our businesses and lives is just not resulting in a good place to live?
Well, first, I live in the People's Republic of Chicago, right? So we are seeing people flock out of here at record paces. I think we're just behind New Jersey and California and people fleeing the state, including businesses. We've lost 5 major Fortune 100 companies in the last year and a half. That's number one. Number two, your question is fantastic because here's the deal. I go back to when Rudy Giuliani lost his first run for mayor of New York. His quote was, "It's not bad enough yet." And I think finally we're at the point now where it's bad enough. And you are going to see a massive swing in voters in the 2024 election. That's why Trump is winning with Hispanics. That's why Trump has doubled his support with the Black community. That is why you're seeing young voters want to vote for Trump because they're tired of living in their mom's basement. Think about this. You have people who graduated from college, not majoring in gender studies with a C- average, getting a neck tattoo and a lip ring, but guys who majored in finance, people who majored in really good majors, and they're still having to go back home because they can't afford an apartment or a house. You're going to see these people swing to the right. And in 2024, I really believe if the voters turn out instead of staying home, you're going to see a massive swing towards Republicans because people are sick and tired of the way the economy is right now under the Biden regime, and they want a change. They want to go back to $1.50 gas, and we'll take the mean tweets all day long.
Jim Nels, you're a supply chain consultant. Thank you so much for being on the Jenna Ellis Show today. When we come back, we're going to dive into this illegal immigrant that murdered a mother of 5. Can you believe he had done that in El Salvador and got into this country? You're not going to want to miss this discussion. We're going to get the details and more. You've tuned in to the Jenna Ellis Show. Jeff Hunt filling in for Jenna Ellis.
Big tech, big government, and the progressives have done everything they can to silence truth and sanity. But there's a secret weapon out there that they can't touch. 1 year ago, a new digital streaming platform, the Real Life Network, was launched to provide a desperate world with much needed programming free from the overreach and interference of government and media. The explosive growth they've seen speaks for itself. In one short year, more than 100 programmers have jumped on board to provide content, from podcasts and interviews to sermons and conferences to kids shows and feature-length films. I'm proud to be among them, as you can find The Jenna Ellis Show and several of my interviews on Real Life Network. And get this, over 30 million minutes of programs that are free from the influence of secular agendas have been viewed. Real Life Network can change your life, and it's free. Sign up now at reallifenetwork.com, that's reallifenetwork.com, and receive a free digital download of Countdown, a brand new book from Real Life Network founder, my friend, Pastor Jack Hibbs.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hunt. I'm filling in for Jenna Ellis. Rachel Morin was a mother of 5. She went hiking in Maryland back in August. She was viciously attacked, raped, and murdered. Over the weekend, the police solved the crime. Who did it? It was an illegal immigrant. Let's get some of these headlines that we're covering the news story here. Rachel Morin murdered, illegal immigrant from El Salvador, charged in the rape and killing of the Maryland mom of 5. The police chief saying we are 1,800 miles from the southern border, and American citizens are not safe because of failed immigration policies. This creep, this murderer, had committed similar crimes in El Salvador, fled to the United States, attacked a young girl in California, and then attacked this mother in Maryland. Listen to the police chief's press conference on Saturday.
Rachel was not his first victim, and it's my understanding that this suspect, this monster, fled to the United States illegally after committing the brutal murder of a young woman in El Salvador a month early in January of 2023. Once in our country, and likely emboldened by his anonymity, he brutally attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother during a home invasion in March of 2023 in Los Angeles. And as everyone, I believe, is aware, that was our first DNA match linking Rachel's case to the Los Angeles case. It has been a fear of mine that once we identified this suspect, the result would be exactly this. And I want to now direct these comments to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and to every member in both chambers of Congress. We are 1,800 miles away here in Harford County. We are 1,800 miles away from the southern border, and the American citizens are not safe because of failed immigration policies. This is the second time in just 2 years that an innocent Harford County woman has lost her life to a criminal in our country illegally. Let me repeat that. 1,800 miles from the southern border, and this is the second woman in our county to be killed by an illegal alien. Suspects, in both cases, they are suspects from El Salvador with ties to criminal gangs. Should not be happening. Victor Hernandez did not come here to make a better life for himself or for his family. He came here to escape the crime he committed in El Salvador. He came here and murdered Rachel, and God willing, no one else. But that should have never been allowed to happen.
Joining us to provide comment is Dave Reboy. He's a fellow at the Claremont Institute. Dave, what do you think of all this?
Well, glad to be with you, even though the topic is horrific and terrible. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, this is it's horrible stuff, and it's an inevitability when, as the wonderful sheriff had the guts and the forthrightness to come out and address the government directly, you know, being President Biden and members of Congress. I mean, this is the kind of thing that unfortunately happens unavoidably when you have absolutely no control over the border. And I mean, to go on better, they want no control over the border. I mean, they're getting exactly what they want, exactly what what policy outcomes are inevitable based on the choices that they've made. And it's
Dave, you're,
disgusting. It's ridiculous.
Dave, I think they should build a monument to all the victims that have lost their lives as a result of the open border policies that Joe Biden has implemented. To your exact point, we have brought this upon ourselves. We have elected people that are willing to turn the other way and not see what's happening at the border, to allow these types of people. This guy, this murderer, had done this in El Salvador and fled to America. What is wrong with our elected officials when that is happening in our country?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Look, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think it's a wonderful idea to put together such a monument, because, look, this is the kind of thing that, unfortunately generates press. And the left has used these types of situations very well, going back, more than 100 years. George Floyd is the most famous, recent example. And there are a number of these very, very unfortunate, sad tragedies where people have been killed by illegals who should never have been here in the first place. And I think a monument would be good. And not only that, it would also, I mean, it would be appropriate. Yes. Because these victims are absolutely deserving that, and their memory deserves that. But also, I mean, as political warfare, it's good too, because let the Democrats come and huff and puff against such a memorial. I mean, this is their handiwork here. And again, I want to thank the sheriff.
Well, I was going to say, Dave, you and I can hatch that right here. We'll hatch it right on Jenna Ellis's show. I want to ask you about how these types of stories may connect with college-educated suburban women. Okay, we know from polling that they're the group that has left Donald Trump and don't support him. They're the kind of the biggest group that doesn't support him, mostly on choice issues. And they don't really like his personality. But this was a mom. She went for a hike. She was supposed to be in one of the safest places out there, and she was attacked, brutally raped, and murdered on a hiking trail. Do these types of stories make college-educated suburban women maybe second guess their support of Joe Biden and his border policies?
Well, you would think they would, but I've got bad news for you. We have, unfortunately, we have a lot of people in this country, and especially in blue states, blue cities, really, where you have people who are just, they feel like they're insulated from all of this. And I mean, that to your point, which is that as these these criminal actions and behaviors and these trends get worse and worse, and the crime rate goes up, and these horrific things keep happening. Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that people's opinions on this kind of thing will shift. But to tell you the truth, a lot of people are really insulated, and to be frank, the more money you make, the better off you are insulated, and the less opportunity you have for kind of something terrible to happen to you. So for many of these people, in blue America, they're in la la land, and it's the folks who are in suburban Maryland and places like that they're at the wrong place and they're at the wrong time, and they really suffer for these policies, and that's a terrible shame.
Right. Dave Reaboi is a fellow with the Claremont Institute. Thanks so much for being on the program. I think we launched something. The Victims of Illegal Immigration Memorial. We'll get to that. Up next, we're going to talk about, has marijuana been a success in Colorado? I'm Jeff Hunt, filling in for Jenna Ellis.
Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hunt. I'm filling in for Jenna Ellis today. I'm a radio host on the Salem Media Network in Denver, Colorado. You know, Colorado tried marijuana back in 2012. Hasn't worked out so well. In fact, the Denver Gazette out with a major headline this week. We'll pull it up here for you. Pot leaves users and dealers high and dry. As other states look to Colorado as the pot pioneer, if properly informed, they will run from proposals to replicate this mess. They will discard the misrepresentation of politicians who claim victory for going where no state had gone before. Joining us to provide comment is Luke Niforatos. He's an executive vice president with Smart Approaches for Marijuana. Luke, how is Colorado done with all this commercialized pot?
Jeff, thank you so much for having me on the show. And yeah, it's I think it's kind of the 3 C's of cannabis: crime, chaos, and cannabis use psychosis. Where do we begin? So crime has really skyrocketed since Colorado legalized marijuana. We have rising levels of both property and violent crime. We had studies that showed that if you, shocker, bring a pot shop into your neighborhood, property crime skyrockets. You bring the dealers around, and I guess that's not a good thing for communities. I don't know where they got that idea. Then, you have the issue of chaos. Our roads are pure chaos right now. We've seen this editorial you're talking about, a more than 50% increase since we legalized marijuana in people dying on the roads from marijuana impaired drivers. 1 in 4 of all of our road deaths involves a driver who was high on THC. So that's been a disaster. And then cannabis use psychosis. So this is brand new. These new high potency products that the new marijuana industry has created, nothing like the joints of the 1970s. These are super high potent. It's a totally different drug. Now people are developing mental illness, schizophrenia. They're going psychotic and actually committing acts of violence. So no matter which way you look at it, this policy has been a failure here in Colorado, Jeff.
But Luke, what about all the tax dollars we're able to bring in?
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest promises was that we would make this huge windfall in cash. What that's worked out to be is about literally a fraction of 1%. So about 0.7% of Colorado's state budgeted revenues has been marijuana tax revenue. And it's funny because, I come from a business background. This idea we're going to talk about all this money we're going to make from a policy, but nobody talks about the costs, right? If I went to my board and said, we made $10 million in revenue, they would laugh me out of the room because they'd say, well, what was your cost of doing business? And so if you're losing money, if you're spending more money than you're making, then that's not anything to brag about. So what we're seeing in Colorado is a lot more expenditures on treatment emissions for marijuana addiction, a lot more expenditures on the roads, on regulations. So when you total up all the costs, a lot of studies show we're losing money, maybe even $4.50 for every dollar in tax revenue that we make as a state. And Jeff, if you don't mind, one other promise we were made in Colorado was, we'll get rid of the black market. The drug dealers will go away. Well, the DEA just testified before Congress last month that Chinese cartels are getting involved in the state legal marijuana game right now. They are laundering fentanyl money through state legal marijuana companies and into our banking system. So if you want to help China's cartel system and probably what the CCP wants for us, then legalize marijuana. That'll really help these cartels launder a lot more fentanyl money and fentanyl in.
Luke, aren't we just seeing the resurrection of big tobacco all over again? This is now commercialized effort.
Yeah, it's all obviously big business. I mean, we've seen this addiction playbook before. Purdue Pharma, big tobacco, where they are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. Well, wouldn't you know it? The same players are involved in marijuana. You have the largest tobacco company, Altria, which is the new name for Philip Morris. They're invested billions of dollars into marijuana industry. You also have the Purdue Pharma CEO who wrote the playbook for OxyContin's marketing plan. He literally wrote it. Now he's in the marijuana industry. So, to expect that, with marijuana, it's going to be somehow better is ridiculous. We are seeing the exact same playbook playing out.
Yep, we've all seen this playbook before. Luke Neferratos with Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Thanks so much for being on the Jenna Ellis Show. When we come back, I'm going to interview George Brauchler. He prosecuted James Holmes on the shooting that took place in Michigan. We'll be right back.
Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing, and investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
Hi, Jeff Hunt here, filling in for Jenna Ellis. I'm a radio host on the Salem Media Network in Denver, Colorado. Over the weekend, a guy approached a splash pad. You know, one of those little splash pads where you take 2, 3-year-olds to jump around because they're not old enough to go swimming in a pool yet. And he opened fire on them, injuring 9. Check out this headline. Police search for motive after apparent random shooting at Michigan Recreation Center wounds at least 9 people. Police on Sunday identified the gunman as Michael William Nash, of 42 years old, of Shelby Township. He pulled up to the Brooklands Plaza splash pad, left a vehicle, and opened fire from roughly 20 feet away, reloading multiple times, the sheriff of Oakland County said on Saturday. To help provide some perspective on this is George Brauchler. George is a good friend, and honestly, there's not anybody better to talk to about this. He was the lead prosecutor that prosecuted James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooting, and the STEM Highlands Ranch shooting that took place. This guy understands what goes on in the mind of a radical mass shooter like we saw in Michigan on Saturday. George, thanks so much for helping us understand what's going on here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I had talked to you just before we went live here about some of the great irony of the timing and location of all this. I'd say within the last little more than a week or so, I was at Oakland, Michigan, for a 7th annual Active Assailant Conference that was entirely dedicated towards cases just like this. And I tell you, half of every speaker that I listened to would say at some point, We know it's going to happen again. It's just a matter of when. But I don't think anybody at that conference thought that that when was going to be a week later and the where was going to be within miles of where we sat.
Here you have ice cream cones, flip-flops covered in blood, 9 people shot. You had parents shielding their kids, getting shot 7 times while they shielded their kids. It's heartbreaking to see this going on. Now, in this case, this man that perpetrated this act over the weekend took his own life. But James Holmes, for instance, did not, the Aurora Theater shooting. The 2 people that walked into the STEM school in Highlands Ranch and killed John Castillo. I'm going to take every chance I can to talk about that young, brave man who saved his classmates Kendrick Castillo by throwing his own body upon them to shield his fellow students. Help me understand what goes on in the mind of somebody that perpetrates this type of mass shooting.
I wish I could tell you there was one common thread, but one thing that we know is that mental illness plays a role in a lot of these shooters. But I don't want anyone to go away from this conversation conflating mental illness with insanity. Not the same thing. And in a Venn diagram, I think what people ought to appreciate is there can be overlap between mental illness and evil. And that's what you see in many of these cases, and this may likely turn out to be that way. We know that these folks are drawn to doing things because, one, there's a part of them that has self-loathing and wants to engage in some self-harm. And when you've gotten to that place, you are a danger to others, because if you're willing to hurt yourself, it makes it far more likely you're willing to hurt someone else. This guy was armed, even though he used handguns. We know that the drone that the cops sent in at the time that and by the way, hats off to law enforcement here. These guys, because of some pretty new technology, were able to get to that pool in under 2 minutes. They were able to track this guy down pretty quickly. There was a standoff that took place. And when he finally took his own life and they got inside the house, they found that this guy had a semi-automatic rifle and a whole bunch of rounds and magazines available to him. They think they likely stopped whatever part 2 of this was. And that part 2 is usually going to take the form of trying to get more victims. Now, I can't tell you what the individual motive here is, and I want to know that, because the scary part for you and I, Jeff, is when you can't come up with a motive, it means you can't address it. It means you can't stop it in someone else. The random act of mass violence is some of the scariest, because how do you protect yourself from it short of engaging in active enforcement of your own Second Amendment rights?
George Brauchler, you have prosecuted some of the most high-profile mass shooting cases in the country. It seems like a lot of these guys target gun-free zones, right? They want to inflict the worst possible violence and murder upon innocent people. So they go after theaters. They go after schools. You look at Sandy Hook, a kindergarten class. In this case,
Churches.
in Michigan over the weekend, churches, yeah. In this case over the weekend, a splash pad. I can't think of anything more innocent, George, than kids with ice cream cones on a sunny Saturday morning in June, and this horrible person attacks them. Sorry, there's a whole lot of words I wanted to use there. Are these guys aiming to cause the most violence they can, and are they going after these gun-free zones?
Yes, they are. Another common thread for all of these mass shooters is they are cowards. They are gutless. And their goal is to be in a situation where they have overwhelming firepower and surprise, and they don't expect anybody else to be there. I mean, remember for Aurora, this guy was so gutless, he took a Vicodin an hour before he left his apartment to go commit his mass murder, because he thought the police might get rough with him and throw him on the ground, and he didn't want to feel any pain. He thought he was going to a place where he'd be the only person with a gun. This guy clearly goes to a place where he thinks he's the only person with a gun. That is a repeating and recurring theme for these mass shooters. So your supposition is right. Whether it's declared a gun-free zone or it's one that just by tradition and common sense you would expect to find people vulnerable, like not, their back isn't up, they're not guarded, they're not vigilant, and they're not armed. These are the places that these gutless cowards want to go.
George Brauchler, do you think red flag laws will solve this?
No. I mean, look, the problem here is that we become so fixated on the gun piece of this and not on the mental health piece of this. And I defy anybody to find one of these red flag laws that tackles the mental health part. It's as if we take someone who's dangerous to themselves and others and say, well, if we can just figure out a way to take the guns away and provide them no services, no treatment, whatever, they're going to be safe in the community. I think that's foolish. I think that's proven time again to be ineffective. I think the problem with red flag is it focuses on the implement of evil, not the evildoer, not the mentally ill person. And as long as we continue to do that, we're going to be victimized by these kinds of people. There needs to be intervention at that nexus between dangerous mental illness and any implement that could cause death. A firearm, a knife, a car. There needs to be a nexus, an intervention in that nexus. And red flag, at least the ones, especially the one we've seen here in Colorado, is ineffective for that purpose.
George Brauchler, you're a former prosecutor, former district attorney. Would you encourage people to go get a concealed carry? Would that have helped the situation? We've seen it stop violence in churches before.
You know, what's interesting, and you track these cases much like I do, you don't come across a lot of cases of a good Samaritan who's well-trained and armed shooting the wrong person. What you do come across are a bunch of those same people stopping evildoers in their home, in a convenience store, on the street. I'm a concealed carry holder, and I do that for a very important reason. And it's not because I carry when I go to a theater, not because I think I'm going to be able to stop a madman. Don't know. But here's what I do know. I'm not going to be left with just a hope and a prayer when the bad guy shows up. I'm going to give myself another option to protect my family. And I think we need to encourage that and to destigmatize gun ownership. And that's what we've seen, I think, with society a lot is we've begun to stigmatize it. You see someone walking around with a handgun on their hip and you draw certain conclusions about them. I think we need to move away from that.
George Brauchler, chief prosecutor against James Holmes in the Aurora Theater shooting, prosecuted the two people that went after the STEM school in Highlands Ranch. And thank you for keeping the memory of Kendrick Castillo alive. Our hearts are always with John and Maria, his parents, who are great friends of ours. But George, thanks so much for taking time to join the Jenna Ellis Show today.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for covering this important topic. It's not going away.
Yeah. Up next, we're going to be covering whether or not Democrats are abandoning Biden. Jeff Hunt filling in for Jenna Ellis. We'll be right back. Welcome back. My name's Jeff Hunt. I'm filling in for Jenna Ellis tonight. I'm a radio host with the Salem Media Network in Denver, Colorado. All right, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George Clooney, they all got together for a big fundraiser. Check out the very end of this when Barack Obama had to slowly kind of guide Joe Biden off the stage. They're wrapping up there. They're waving. They're saying hi to everybody. And then Barack is saying, you know, guys, it's time we get off the stage here. But Joe Biden kind of just stares off into nowhere, doesn't he? And so it requires the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, guiding Joe Biden off the stage. I want you to just think about this for a second. Think about how far we have fallen. It used to be Barack Obama. And I tried to unseat Barack Obama in 2012. I worked for the Mitt Romney campaign. Hey, don't throw things at the TV screen. I apologize for that. I'm probably the only guy in America that worked for Mitt Romney and has spoken at a Donald Trump rally. So I'm MAGA, I'm America first. But look, think about how far we have fallen. Barack Obama, then Hillary Clinton in 2016. Then you have Joe Biden in 2020. Now you have possibly Kamala Harris. Who do they replace Joe Biden with? Who do they replace him with? They can't replace him with Kamala Harris. She's a disaster. And so we're stuck at a place now where this is the Democrat nominee. But former Democrat donors are not on board anymore. Check out this headline from the New York Post. Former Obama fundraiser is so fed up with the left that she's selling her $1 million Dem collectibles. We need elected officials, she said, with policies that make our cities safer. We need police to support those laws. She owns property and once lived in San Francisco. She calls it a failed science experiment for super leftist ideas and ideals. It's descent into lawless chaos, it's descent into lawless chaos in recent years spurred her to move to the right. So she's seen these Democrat cities. Listen to this. This just came out this past weekend. The city of San Francisco has only sold and built 16 homes in the last year. The city of San Francisco only built 16 new homes. People don't want to move there. In Democrat cities, everything is expensive and everything has gone to crap. It's not worth living in these cities anymore, and they have fallen. And so this woman, who we just gave you the headline for, she owns the original Barack Obama Hope painting. Remember all those posters you saw in 2008 and 2012? Hope, and all the hope that Barack Obama was going to bring us. She owns the original painting. It cost her over $1 million to buy it. She's no longer with the Democrats. She is actively and publicly and vocally supporting Donald Trump. Things are changing out there, folks. People are leaving the Democrat Party. We've seen that record numbers of Hispanics, record numbers of African Americans are leaving the Democrat Party. In fact, all you're really left with at this point are kind of college educated women who make the top issue choice. These cities have gone to crap. You have an open border where moms going for a hike are being raped and killed. There is no policy subscription whatsoever that's working for the Democrat Party anymore, and they're leaving. And when you see that video of Joe Biden being escorted off, you have to ask yourself, another 4 years of that? And what's the alternative? Kamala Harris? Gavin Newsom? Gavin has failed his way all the way to the top. He failed in San Francisco. He failed as the governor of California. Why would you make that guy the president of the United States? We are at a place now where the Democrats have no alternative. They have to bring out Barack Obama, Jimmy Kimmel, George Clooney, and all these celebrities to try to prop him up. And then you have to escort him off the campaign. I can't think of a better visual than what you just saw of where the Democrat Party is now. It's old, it's outdated, it's out of touch, and all of their policies have failed. It's time for a new change. Let's leave Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and that whole wing of the Democrat Party behind. It's time for new leadership. It's time for America First leadership. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see what's happened to these communities. I live in the city of Denver. We have spent $340 million on illegal immigrants. That's money that's not going to our veterans. That's money that's not going to our citizens. It's money that's not going to our schools. Change it all. America First. Friends, it's been an honor. Jeff Hunt filling in for Jenna Ellis. She's a wonderful friend of mine. I consider this a great honor. And we'll continue back. Be sure to stay connected and watching the Salem Media Network.